The views and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media is strictly prohibited. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and after a week off where we were actually making some changes to our format as requested by sponsors and by our listeners, we are back. So, the new format will be having us presenting 5 days a week instead of just 3. Mondays and Fridays will be our normal 20-25-minute sessions where we answer many of the emails that come in from our listeners. And on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll be taking on one topic for only about 10 minutes. That topic will either come from the news, something that recently happened, or from our mailbag from our listeners. So we hope everybody enjoys this new format with more episodes during the week. So let's get to it. So for today's first long episode, the Monday episode, we'll be talking about the recent Kamala Harris economic plan that was released. And there was a lot of complaints from both the Republicans and the Democrats. And we want to talk about how the economy works and what some of these plans might mean, what might Trump's plan of using tariffs, what that might mean for the economy. So let's listen in.
The topic here is Kamala Harris revealed her economic plan, which came under harsh criticism from both Republican and Democrat alike. So what do you think about these criticisms? And would her plan be worse than Trump's idea of tariffs? And I also wanted to ask about the upcoming debate between Vance and Walz, unless you wanted to table that for another time, because I think that will be a very interesting topic.
We could table that one.
Yeah, I think so. We got some time for that.
Yeah. Economic plan. First of all, I think people are reading into it more than what was actually said. She's talking, everybody seemed to be framing it that it's going to be price freezes and, government control of prices and things like that. That's actually not exactly what's being said. Yes, they want to go after price gouging. Okay, we did that back in the 70s. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. The reason that the United States' economy, people are so down on it is because of the prices at the grocery store. And, I've always said there's a misconception of how much control the government has over the prices of things. We are producing more oil independently than we ever have in the history of the United States. But gas prices are still high. So the question is why? Well, the only way the government impacts the cost of gasoline is through taxes. That's really the only way that they do it. The taxes that they put on gasoline and on the companies that produce the gasoline. Other than that, prices are completely controlled by the company. ExxonMobil says what their gas is going to cost. That's all there is to it. And then it even goes down to the individual gas station owners as far as what the cost of gas is going to be. I think people, if you realize, if you go on a Wednesday to a gas station and you look at the price of gas, and then you go on a Friday, surprisingly enough, it's 20 cents more. Why? Because you're going to be traveling more on the weekend. So, somebody's trying to make a profit here. Going after those kind of predatory practices, how much money is enough for a corporation to make? I think that's a legitimate argument. I don't think it means price. I don't think it means setting prices. I do not believe that. But it's just like any other commodity. There's a supply chain there, and everybody in the supply chain increases the price a little bit. And that's how you get to the price that you're at. As I say, the only thing the government has control of is the rate of tax. That's it. And that hasn't gone up. So I don't know, explain to me, why does a barrel of oil today, where gas is, I think I paid $2.89 this past week, why is a price of oil today cheaper than it was when I was paying $1.69? Who's raising the price on these things? It's not the government. And I think we have to look at that again, critical and analytical thinking, how the system works. And I think if we did that, I think that price gouging and really paying attention to that, I think it's a good plan. Tariffs, bad idea. The country that imposes the tariff, it's their people that pay the tariff. I mean, that's simple economics. So no, that tariffs don't work, and I think that's ridiculous.
Well, tariffs work if you believe Trump, right? Well, Trump continues to claim that China pays the tariffs, not consumers. And it's not true, but his people believe him. Even if they know that it's not true, somehow or another they rationalize in their minds that you can do this and not see prices go up here because the Chinese will pay for it, the same way the Mexicans paid for the wall. Consumer prices have risen since 2019, which is like the year that people like to talk about, right? Because everybody on the Trump side wants to cut 2020 out of his presidency altogether. But since 2019, consumer prices have gone up by 22.6, I believe, percent, which a lot of people are upset about, and fairly so. But hourly wages have gone up 25%, and wages for non-supervisory workers are up 28%. So, you take these things as, we all like bigger wages and smaller inflation, but the two of them seem to walk in lockstep. And as long as wages are higher than inflation, it should be okay. The idea of getting prices back down to where they were before the pandemic means that you're going to have deflation, not a low inflation. And inflation is extremely painful, right? And you really don't want that to happen. So,
do you mean deflation is extremely painful?
Deflation, yeah. Deflation is a very painful thing to go through because the price of things lowers, everybody's wages lower. It's an economic collapse basically is what causes deflation. And so you really don't want that. The biggest question I have, I think, for and I think I disagree here with Mark a little bit, is that when CEOs and CFOs are doing earnings reports and they say, well, thanks to our new aggressive price strategy, our profits are up by 400%. That's somebody that you should be able to go after. And that is a role that government could play. And I don't know what you do about it other than say, damn it, lower your prices or there are going to be consequences, and those consequences could be windfall taxes or something along those lines, right? Other than that, what role do you really have in this? We live in a free market society. Do people forget that when a Democrat is in office and think that, the free market is all of a sudden gone and the president of the United States has a dial in his office that he uses to turn up prices or turn down prices? And I don't think that that's the case. I know that's not the case. And so what, how much does the president really have to do with inflation? the idea that we still have high inflation because consumers still have the money from the American Rescue Plan from 3 years ago when they got $1,400 it's either crazy or it's sickening, one or the other. It's crazy that people still have that money, or it's sickening that people earn so little money that actually makes that big a difference in their lives. It was supposed to tide you along until things got better, until the supply chains could be unraveled, until all the knots in the system could be fixed and the truckers were back on the road. Well, commerce is going well. Consumers are spending money. This morning a bizarre thing happens in that they revised the last the 3 months of employment, and they've discovered that about 87,000 people more lost their jobs or didn't get hired. I think it's didn't get hired over the last 3 months than they originally thought. And the Fed is making decisions based on that data, and the data is obviously very faulty and in need of revision. Now, that's always been the case, but I don't remember a time when they came up with, we were off by 800,000 jobs, and that's the data that the Fed uses. That meant that the Fed didn't drop the rate in August, as a lot of people hoped that they would, or even in June, which was at one point in March or something like that looked like a possibility, and that they're holding on till September. Now, September's only a few weeks away, and the Fed is expected to drop that rate. They may end up dropping that rate more than they would have because of the data that came out today. And what that will mean is an incredible boost to the economy at the absolute perfect time that the Democrats need it to be that way. And it is, perhaps the best bad thing to happen, in the bizarre world that we live in economically, where bad news is really good news and good news is really bad news. That it's going to put a great wind at Kamala Harris's back because the job reports have not been as good as they thought they were, and the Fed is going to drop interest rates by 3/4 of a point rather than 1/4 of a point. Economics is an awful weird thing that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And even people like Larry Summers really seem to get it wrong. And I don't know who gets it right. I only know that the critics are, the critics are wrong. It may be that the boosters are wrong too, but the critics are wrong.
Right. And I'll say this. I've always said that there's two professions that you could be wrong 50% of the time and still keep your job. One is an economist, another is a meteorologist. Economics is so complex, and it depends on how you look at it. Keynesian economics, you got the just so many different models that you can subscribe to. And even a blind squirrel gets a kernel of corn every once in a while. Okay, fine. But the fact is that, it really is, it's not run by logic. Why does the stock market go up? Not logic. If you went in and said, oh, Microsoft had this, something bad about them, their stock's going to drop from, 1,000 to 750 overnight. Now, is Microsoft still worth what it was worth yesterday? Absolutely. But, we're always chasing that. We're always chasing these numbers and stuff. I think the Fed is going to lower the rates in September. I wish they had done it sooner, but like Scott said, it's going to come at a perfect time for the Democrats. The problem is that you're still going to have people that say, I was better off when Trump was president financially. No, you weren't. And I've got friends here that say, well, I was better off. I had more money in my pocket. Well, then okay, then I don't know what the heck you're spending your money on, but I don't know what it is. I mean, no, you don't. Especially those that got an 8% increase in their Social Security, and somehow they're still no. That's not the way it works. The thing that always gets me is you've got these people that say, well, I can't afford eggs or this or that, and you look at them and there's a Cadillac sitting in the front lawn. Okay, maybe it's a matter of priorities here. Or somebody that is wearing all the Trump garb that probably cost them about $3,000 for all the bling, or they bought the $399 Trump sneakers, and they're crying about the cost of eggs. Really, really, people? I mean, again, priorities. The economy, and again, if the Fed lowers the rate, president had nothing to do with that. Had nothing to do with it. The Fed is independent of them. And the fact is that, hey, will it help the economy? Absolutely. Scott's right. We don't want deflation, but we don't want runaway inflation, but we don't have that. But you've got people that are talking heads that get onto the news sources and say, oh, it's runaway inflation. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. When it's not. And people, because they don't understand economics, just as much as they don't understand how the government works, just as much as they don't understand how international relations work, they're making their determination because some talking head who also doesn't know anything is telling them this is what you're supposed to believe. And that's probably the majority of our problem here in the United States. We stop thinking for ourselves. We're allowing people to think for us. My comment is anybody that listens to this, go in and check. Go back and fact check us. Knock yourself out. I mean, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Don't take our word for it. But sure as hell don't take Sean Hannity's either. Or Tucker Carlson. Or Laura Ingraham. Madame Diablo. Don't take her. I mean, just come on. You got to do a little bit of. I know it's a little bit of work, and I know it's it's like hard work for you. But look at it this way: if the Republicans in Congress, Comer, and Jim Jordan had the smarts enough to look up the date of Tiananmen Square and match that to Walz's getting married. Hey, anybody can use the internet. And if that doesn't show that anybody can use it, I don't know what does.
I would say this to your friends, and I say this to my Trump friends all the time. You may have like the economy during the Trump era, but that was the Obama economy, not the Trump economy. And you would have to come up with something that Trump did on election day to make the economy better. And Trump will tell you what it is. He's not shy about it. Trump will tell you that his greatness rubbed off on the American economy.
Yep.
And that just by being elected, all of a sudden the economy was great again. And what I would say is that when Trump became elected president, before he was inaugurated, Fox News took their foot off the throat of the economy and allowed us to say, yes, the economy is better. After 4 years of denying that the second term Obama was a really, really good economy, that they couldn't run on that. So they kept saying the economy is terrible. And it's really interesting that the two things that were going on that Fox News was denying were the two things that Trump voters voted on. Number one, immigration, which at the time of the election was at a 40-year low. Illegal crossings, 40-year low. Illegal immigration, which, yes, at one point had been a sore spot in the Obama administration, had been solved, just as it is solved now. The economy, which at the first Obama term was awful because it was still George W. Bush's economy. And kids, let's not get crazy. Economies this big don't turn on a dime, okay? It takes some time for one president to unravel the mess that he was given, and it takes some time for one president to mess up the great economy that he was given, right? In both those cases, it seems to be about 3 years. So let's see if that data holds up, okay? But Obama knew that his successor was going to have a great economy. He was hoping it was Hillary Clinton. It turned out not to be. It turned out to be Donald Trump. And Trump claimed that economy from day one of being elected, not day one of making the Trump tax cuts, not day one of deciding on tariffs against China, a trade war against China. All of those things came later. The tax cuts, I believe, in 2018, and the tariffs a year earlier, probably. And both of those things had a horrible effect on inflation, right? And I heard a Texas congressman say this on the radio to Julie Mason. He said, "We made a choice. The Republican Party has been a free trade party all along, but we decided that it was worth losing those cheap goods from China in order to combat them on other things that they were doing that were unfair, like subsidizing too much manufacturing and unfair trade practices when it came to IP and things like that, that they made a conscious decision not to oppose Trump on those tariffs, knowing that it was going to cause inflation, but also believing that it was the right thing to do for the country because China was cheating on IP and other things." So that was a conscious decision that the Republicans made, and they should own it. And they don't own it. They blame it on others. And I really do think that, we need to get a grip when it comes to what the good Trump economy was and when the Trump economy actually started. And I would say that the Trump economy started sometime in the summer of 2019. And that by February, we knew that we were in a recession. A recession means 2 quarters of negative growth, a great oxymoron, negative growth. Two quarters of that. So by February, if you go back 2 quarters, you've got the last quarter of 2019 and the third quarter of 2019. That's when the Trump economy kicked in, and that's when the recession began. And it was a slow move to February. In February 2020, we went into a very, very deep recession that only lasted a few months, right? The COVID hit and the whole thing just hit the floor. And we had a really deep recession that began to rebound in the third quarter of 2020, slowly began to rebound, and that had another dip in the first quarter of 2021, and the second round of COVID that hit, Delta, which was deadly, that spring, also created a tremendous dip in the economy, snarled supply chains, kept truckers off the road, kept people out of stores, damaged the economy, and we have recovered from that. And it took a while, but 3 years in, Biden has a good economy, and he's going to gift that to whoever comes along next, and hopefully that'll be Kamala Harris.
Yep. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Science. The JCIS is an open journal for upcoming scholars. The JCIS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis. The JCIS is a publication of Nova Works, a scholarly depository at Nova Southeastern University. A link to the journal is in our description. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, who is our editing partner, and Podkite, who does all of our analytics. We'd also like to thank iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source for music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd also like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershwer, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.